What up, everybody? We're going to do a little knife review. And this is a knife that was loaned to me from my buddy Dan. You can see this is not typically what I would be reviewing on my channel, but Dan is my boy and he wanted it reviewed, so I'm going to do it. This is a Schrade product. It's an American-made product. It's one of their older pieces. This was made in 1991. It is based on their LB7 model, which is basically their version of the Buck 110 lockback folder. And it's a model that Schrade continues to make in multiple different variations. Now this one's a commemorative model. It's a little shinier, a little more polished. It came in a commemorative box. It came with a nice leather sheath. And it's, you know what, it's a decent knife. I'm not a big fan of these classic lockbacks. That was my dad's knife. This is a Vietnam era design in a knife, and knife technology has come so far, not only in materials, construction techniques, lock technology, pivot technology. I mean, just every aspect of folding pocket knives has come so far since this model was popular. Now, this is a full-size knife. You're looking at a 3 3/4 inch blade. Blade stock thickness is 121 thousandths of an inch. Blade width is right over 8/10ths of an inch, about 850 thousandths of an inch. Handle length is 4 7/8 inch. Handle thickness 597 thousandths, so almost 6/10ths of an inch. The handle width at the widest 1 inch. The closed width at the widest 1.31 inch. Overall length 8 5/8 inch, and this thing weighs in at a hefty 7.83 ounces. Okay, why is it so heavy? I can tell you. These classic double bolstered lockback designs have a lot of metal in the bolster. And you got to keep in mind, this thing is 6/10ths of an inch thick. And you've got nickel and nickel on both ends. Look at how thick that is. That's a whole bunch of nickel silver, okay? Plus you've got nickel full liners. Okay, they're full liners. Then you've got the lockback, the lock mechanism, you've got the blade steel, you've got all kinds of pin material in it that is also nickel, and you can see that's where you get that nearly half a pound of weight. That is one thing I do not like about these vintage knives, whether it's in this model or the Buck 110. But it is pretty. I mean, it is very well polished. The nickel pins on the nickel bolsters with the nickel liners, it's very attractive and it polished up well. This is a classic clip point. This clip point was very popular in the late 60s through the 70s and 80s. In the Buck 110 model, and anybody else that did a version of this, this was a very popular knife to carry for soldiers, American soldiers that were in Vietnam. I'd just about say that the Buck 110 itself was the most sought after folding knife in that era, and it is considered a classic. This Schrade LB7 profile is Schrade's take on that, so it would be considered a classic handle and blade profile. Now, as far as the blade steel on this, I did research that. I do not know for sure what it is, but I'm going to hazard a guess. I would just about guarantee that it is 440A. Historically, Schrade has loved 440A. They still do. It's an inexpensive 400 series stainless. It is corrosion resistant. It's got enough carbon content to where it can be hardened enough to take a decent edge. I don't feel that it's very supportive of ultra thin edges, and of course it is not going to give you any type of edge retention compared to modern stainless steels. But that's just the way of the world. Things get improved upon. What is interesting in this is that it is a vintage and classic design. There are still men that swear by this design, and they are not interested in anything more modern. They're not interested in a ball bearing pivot, titanium frame flipper, and a super stainless steel. They've got no interest in that. This is what they're familiar with. So I think it's still a viable design even in 2017, since these older gentlemen still love it. Because just because I don't like it doesn't mean that it's not good. Now the quality on this is pretty decent. It's got these Delrin handle scale inserts. They are pinned with nickel silver pins. They're plastic inserts with fake scrimshaw on them to commemorate the flight of the Kitty Hawk. It is a numbered knife. You can see there's a serial number right here on the pivot end bolster. It is marked Schrade USA. There is also a etching on the blade. I'm trying to catch a light. There you go. Unfortunately, in this example, it was stored for a long time with the oil on it, and it left a brown stain all over the blade that the owner was not happy with and had buffed off, and of course that took a lot of this etching off here. It's a pretty basic design. It's a lockback folder with a nail catch to open it. It's two-hand opening. I have tried to open this one-handed, but the back spring is stiff enough and the action is stiff enough that all this polished nickel, you're going to fling the thing out of your hand before you fling it open. And if you do, if it hits something weighing almost a half a pound, it's going to damage something. You don't want to be in the living room trying to flick this thing open and throw it through your TV. That would very much be possible. This knife was a commemorative model. It did come in a commemorative box. It has this sheath. It's a pretty decent leather pouch sheath, snap closure. It's got a belt loop on the back. That's a classic design too. I mean, just about every knife of this type, regardless of manufacturer, has come with a sheath just like that. These knives hold so true to the original design, original presentation, and original equipment that even across different manufacturers' versions, you get the same basic thing. I can't say a lot about this knife other than it is a classic design, a classic vintage representation of a clip point lockback folder. This profile and design is instantly recognizable to just about any man, young man, or boy that loves knives. And it does have a certain appeal just from that. Now, if you're an aviation enthusiast and you are a Wright Brothers and Flight of the Kitty Hawk enthusiast, well, of course, this is going to hold some interest to you. It commemorates that flight, those brothers, and that era in aviation. So, in that respect, also, this is a worthy knife to have in your collection. I appreciate my buddy Dan loaning it to me so I can review it. I don't have anything against any designs like this, even though it's not really what I'm interested in. I can understand why other people would be interested in it. And I got to tell you what, I've already said, but during Vietnam, buddy, there was a lot of men that carried a knife just like this. Okay, it was the knife to have. And I just about guarantee that this classic clip point folding lockback design even saved some men's lives. If for no other reason, you've got to give it to this type of knife, because beyond that, how many, just tens of thousands of these knives have been carried on farms, and in factories and by firefighters and policemen and just every blue collar worker that there is out there. I mean, really, how many of these have been carried over the last 50 years? This designer knife deserves a spot in history. And this commemorative version is very attractive. It's pretty well done. It's an American-made piece, you know, from a company that doesn't do a lot of American-made products anymore. Schrade is mostly import products. And you know what? I've sold a lot of Schrade knives when I worked in cutlery retail, and there's actually some hidden gems in their product line. And in the last 5 years, Schrade has come a long way. As a company, they are recognizing what their customers want at their typical price point. So I've got to give it to them. They have really improved that. All right, everybody. Hey, I appreciate you watching this. I know this is not a knife that a lot of people are going to be interested in, but it does have its own beauty. Just the smooth feeling of all this nickel on it that's polished out. It's really it's a joy to hold. It's so heavy. Oh my goodness. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. Thank you to Dan for loaning this to me. And I want to say God bless all of you and have a great day.